He alo, face to face. That's how you learn about what makes us weep. He alo, face to face. That's how you learn about what makes us feel, what makes us work, what makes us sing, what makes us bitter, what makes us fight, what makes us laugh, what makes us heal, what makes us stand against the wind, what makes us sit in the flow of power, what makes us us. Not from a distance, not from miles away, not from a book, not from an article you read, not from the newspaper, not from what somebody told you, not from a reliable source, not from what you think, not from a cliff, not from a cave, not from your reality, not from your darkness, nor from your light, but he alo, face to face, or else pa'ako waha, shut tight your mouth. A'ohi o kahinana o luna o kapali, iho mai alalone, ike au nui, ke au iki. He alo. The top of the cliff isn't the place to look at us. Come down here and learn of the big and little current, face to face, and come and help us dig the lo'i deep.
This live broadcast and live stream of Kākou, Hawaii's Town Hall, start now.
Thanks to Puanani Burgess for sharing that special reading of her poem, He Alo, Face to Face. Aloha and welcome to Kākou, Hawaii's Town Hall. I'm Leslie Wilcox. This live broadcast and live stream are coming to you from the Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Multimedia Studio at PBS Hawaii in Honolulu. We're very pleased to have a group of fellow Hawaii residents here tonight to share information and opinions about the future of work. They represent educators at different levels of learning and leadership within Hawaii's education systems. Also here, students and graduates, a state government cabinet minister, a union member who's on strike with technology issues on the table, and the head of the union on his way here, and representatives of the business and nonprofit communities. All for this live conversation about a transformative change in how we live, work, and communicate. I promise you this, there will be no easy answers tonight, no far-reaching solutions. We will scout the changing landscape and share knowledge and perspectives. It's a start, and we'll stay with the subject with a future town hall. The transformative change is being called the fourth industrial revolution. Jobs will be lost or impacted as automation and artificial intelligence perform a wide variety of tasks previously accomplished by humans. Jobs will be created too, in equal numbers? Well, no one can say. In researching the future of work, we came across what is really a training recruitment video from the Netherlands focused on preparing people for the future workforce. The video makes a case that a person can survive and thrive in this new era by finding ways to fill a gap in digital skills. Hang on, this video moves at a fast clip.
If you're watching this, you're among the 3% of people that understand that the future of work is going to look very different from what it is now. So keep watching. Let's see where we're heading. It's also exciting, right? Siri will recognize your voice even if you're 5 meters away from your phone. That new chatbot feels totally real. Self-driving cars are no longer fiction. You can analyze your DNA. You tried flying that drone for the first time, and you're thinking of buying a smart speaker to make your life so much easier. A few years from now, and that's something like 3 years, not 30, artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, mass 3D printing, biotechnology, chatbots, virtual reality, deep learning, drones, augmented reality, smart objects will all be deeply enrooted in our everyday lives. Just like computers, phones, or electricity are for us today. Oh well, is this really gonna happen? And if it does, you'll adapt when the time comes, right? Life is good. You love your job. You've been working for this established company for a few years. You're comfortable in your position. You know what you're good at. People like you, and that last presentation you gave got you some amazing reactions. You're safe with your company. In the meantime, you see an article or two speculating on the future of jobs. McKinsey published a report stating that 45% of all current tasks could be automated with present technology. The World Economic Forum estimates that 33% of jobs in 2020 don't even exist yet. But what do they know, right? You've got time. Oh look, the supermarket just introduced self-cashier machine. You're at the airport checking in luggage. What the heck happened to all the real people at the check-in desk? Gone. Replaced by machines. But it's only the low-skilled jobs, right? Nope, think again. In 2012, there were 150,000 humans working on Wall Street. 3 years later, automation has cut that number down to 100,000. That's 1/3 gone. But it's only the mathematical and scientific jobs, right? Nope, think again. This Japanese insurance company, Kākou Mutual Life Insurance, is already replacing all its human insurance claim workers with an AI system that will handle customers more efficiently. See these articles? They're written by algorithms, and we can't tell the difference with human written content. And thinking of converting yourself to being an online poker player? Too late. There's an AI that can already beat humans at it. Most journalists, tax consultants, marketeers, technicians, knowledge workers, lawyers, even the person editing this video right now will to some extent have been impacted or automated by technology in a couple of years. And what have you been doing? Probably watching Netflix. And the problem is, the machines don't wait. And the machines, they don't watch Netflix. So what are the forces at play here? Basically, there's 10 million developers out there using increasingly simple and cheap technology to build new products and services. Some as young as 12 are already coding the future. Even that safe company you work for is increasingly under outside threat. And it's not just the Google, Amazon, Facebooks, and Apples of the world that I'm talking about. There are now tens of thousands of startups out there eating away at all sorts of jobs. Now, are they creating many jobs in the process? Let's look at some stats. Travel a bunch of years back to when Kodak ruled the world of photography. They were worth $38 billion and employed 140,000 people. That's approximately $270,000 per employee.
Our people work with pride to make Kodak a creative and innovative company.
Fast forward to recent times, YouTube sold for $1.65 billion with a mere 65 employees. That's $25 million per employee. Instagram, which had 13 employees and was sold for $1 billion. That's $77 million per employee. WhatsApp sold for $19 billion with 55 employees. That's a staggering $345 million per employee. So how is this all possible? Technology has allowed the emergence of what we call exponential organizations. These are exponentially fast-growing companies that leverage technology and require less employees but more tech-savvy ones.
You will find that we are technology optimists. We believe that technology is a major driver of change in the world.
And as software continues to eat up the world, more companies are trying to replicate these exponential companies, hire less people but grow exponentially through technology. As this happens, job roles are slowly disappearing and being replaced by skill sets. Employers require you to know an ever-growing number of new and ever-changing fundamental skills in order to use the technologies they've implemented. Master the fundamentals and you can master the rest. A digital skills gap is growing for both mid-skill and high-skill level jobs. Before you know it, you've become irrelevant. But wait, what's this doomsday message? There's actually a way to leverage technology before it leverages you. And in fact, it's never been easier to do so. This might sound kind of corny, but it starts with the right state of mind. It starts with having a growth mindset, where you have the desire and the confidence that you can learn anything. Shift your thinking on how these technologies will rattle and mutate, but enrich your work life. Because yes, if you play your cards right, technology will make your work life and your life in general much, much better. The fact is that technology will actually remove boring, repetitive jobs from your way, but only if you understand the fundamentals. And you have no excuse not to do so. How can you stay relevant if you can't talk the lingo? How can you stay relevant if you can't execute? Can you talk tech? Can you talk APIs? Can you talk code? Can you talk data? While slow educational institutions are struggling to keep up, that's not an excuse. Train yourself, take your education in your own hands. Learn to code, learn about behavioral psychology, automation tools, playing with data, user experiences, be curious. And if you're an employer, train your people. Online and offline courses have never been more readily available or rich in content. It's time to build something. Your greatest credential in this new era is your output of stuff. Proof of your awesomeness. A website, a blog, a prototype, a simple data model. It's time to build cool stuff and showcase it. It's time to start learning. It's time for your growth.
You never want to hear those words, you've become irrelevant. In some fields, advanced technology is already a familiar fixture. For example, the health industry. Mark Wasilewski is the president of Diagnostic Laboratory Services. And I want to ask you, Mr. Wasilewski, what's new in your technology and what's ahead in your business?
Well, about 20 years ago, the laboratory industry went through an automation revolution, if you will. We saw a crisis coming. There wasn't going to be enough laboratorians to handle the workload as the population grew and the population aged. So many of the manufacturers went to the drawing board and said, okay, how can we automate processes? We used to be in separate rooms and mixing chemicals and looking at blood under microscopes and manually plating specimens onto auger plates. So they found ways to automate that as much as possible. As you can see here, this all used to be done by hand. This is where if you were in a biology class, if you remember, we would put specimens on here and look to see what grew. Now we can do this through automation, and it actually turned out to be better because now it was less exposure for our employees, and it was perfect every time as long as the machines were working well.
And the machines didn't ask for a day off or sick leave?
Well, they break down sometimes, but and they never ask for that. That's why the skill set for the future is changing. We need people that not only understand the clinical side, that's always going to be there, but as the technology advances, we need people that understand how to work these machines, how to fix these machines, how to build these machines, how to work the computers behind the machines so they can talk to other computers and print out reports. That's how it's changed in the last 20 years. We reduced in some areas where our highest volume is 70% of our workforce.
And did you face opposition when you reconfigured your business? So I presume some people lost their jobs?
Not too many would lose their jobs. Of course, it was very, very scary. When you're talking about bringing in automation, and we knew the intent was to replace people, is because people we could not find. We went through the culture shock and the fear. We added automation, and of course it wasn't perfect when it first came out, so we couldn't reduce labor at first. But we lost people through attrition. We didn't have to lay off too many people. And very, very quickly, within years, just a few years, people realized we can't live without this automation versus being scared of it.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Wasilewski. Another health professional is here, and that would be Dr. Todd Seto, a cardiologist and also someone who directs at the John A. Burns School of Medicine. Cardiologists, there is probably nothing more human or personal than the human heart. What's going on in your field, and what do you tell future physicians?
There's always a need for the human touch, but for cardiology, in particular in medicine more broadly, the different parts are touched in different ways. So from the training, there's so much information out there. It's really transformed the way that students, young doctors in training, and older physicians learn. So technology's really helped to gather information and make it more available to us, and the amount of information that's there exceeds our capacity to know it. And patients, when they see us, they expect us to know information right away. So we need to learn or use technology to kind of help us kind of get a sense of what's out there. From the treatment standpoint, there's a lot of information that we get from the new diagnostic testing, so from laboratory friends. So using tests to look at different genetic markers, different genes to predict patients' risk for problems, heart disease, cancer. And we have a pretty good sense now of, for certain diseases, of who's at the highest risk of developing those diseases. And then from the treatment standpoint, technology's really changed the way that we do things. So we have robots in an operating room that we can use to do different kinds of surgeries in ways that we couldn't do before. We have different kinds of devices, stents, different kinds of tools that we have to take care of patients. And just it's just transformed the way that we can treat our patients. And really there are ways that complement the human part of that as well.
Do you trust robots with the most intimate parts of your job?
First comment, Steve.
Sorry.
Do you trust robots to do some of the parts of the job that they now do?
Yeah, the robot part's different ways that we can use robots. There's automation that we heard from the laboratory. The robot in the hospital that we use in the operating room, it's human controlled. It's really kind of augmenting the human skills, the technical skills, so it's a complement to the human part of that. So for machinery, technology really are ways to kind of augment or help the human part of that.
Thank you, Dr. Seto from the Queen's Medical Center. And from Architects Hawaii, Aaron Shimizu, you are doing things that save tremendous amounts of human labor and time. What are these things exactly?
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. Just to add to your intro, I'm an adjunct professor at Chaminade University and the BIM manager at Architects Hawaii.
When you say BIM, what does that mean?
So BIM stands for Building Information Modeling. And I guess to jump to that, BIM is intelligent modeling. So we take a model in 3D and give it intelligence. So a door knows it's a door and how it interacts with a wall and a floor. And because there's intelligence built into these elements, certain functions can be automated. I'm here tonight just to talk about a few of these BIM tools that we use. BIM covers many different types of software and hardware. One of them is a point cloud scanner. So we have a measurement robot, if you will, that can sit in the middle of a room and take hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of points within about 2 minutes. So this robot can be operated by an intern or an admin. And this intern or admin with the robotic measurement tool is able to replace teams of architects. Instead of sending 2 or 3 architects to manually measure space, we can send an admin with this scanner and quickly get the same data, in fact, more data. And the reason that the admin is just better is because the robot can capture so much information in such a short amount of time. And we can use that information then to create 3-dimensional models.
That's amazing. What else?
We also have 3D printers. So if you're not familiar with 3D printers, it's just a robotic arm that moves and builds layers of plastic. The process is called fused deposition modeling. It just layers hot plastic on top of each other and can make any shape you need. In the past, this would have been done with maybe balsa wood or foam core and have interns come in and cut out the shapes. But now we can just load our models straight into the printer, push a button, walk away, come back, and there's our model. It's not always that simple. There's little hiccups here and there. You know, the machines do break down, but they don't ask for time off. They just need a little electricity, a model, and they're good to go.
And how do you feel about working with this technology?
Oh, I love it. I mean, it's great. Going out to the job site myself before to take measurements, it's hot. The AC is not always on. It takes a long time. It's dusty. It's tedious. There's, sharp objects sticking up out of the ground sometime. So, I love just being able to put the robot there, push a button, go, wait 2 minutes and move it.
And you do 3D printing, I assume, as well?
Yes, the 3D printing is also,
Scanning.
I would say, safer because instead of having students with X-Acto knives and whatever other instruments they're using to create these models
Make it sound
and
scary.
cut the wood, it's just the robot. And it does use a very hot, heated head, but if you put it in the right location and secure it, it's not really a problem. The last thing I want to talk about is virtual reality. We're able to take our BIM models that have intelligence in them, materials and whatnot, lighting, and automatically create a virtual environment where a user can go into the virtual environment and be in there. It's kind of like the Matrix. It's hard to explain unless you're wearing the headset, but it's kind of like the Matrix if you've seen that movie.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Mr. Shimizu. I want to ask Jason Sewell, who's with a technology company, DevLeague. You get hired by companies in Hawaii and elsewhere to do certain tasks, and your company is known for being able to write code, a computer programming language. What exactly are the companies asking you to do these days?
Really, what they're asking us to do, it's not that we do the work, they're actually looking for talent. So really what we are is we're kind of a streamlined education. And so kind of like the video talked about is the rapid pace of skill demand for certain skill sets and the time it takes to acquire those skills. We deal with a lot of people that have been through various kind of models of education, but they want to get into the workforce quickly. A lot of them are career transitioners. The pace of the skills and what's being demanded moves extremely quickly. I mean, everything we deal with is in the field of technology, and so business can't wait for education necessarily. They need the skills now to compete in the market and to kind of survive. And so really, that's kind of where we're at, is that the cost of education or kind of college education has increased dramatically. I think now the average degree is about $130,000, with close to on a 30-year interest is about another $100,000. Some of those outcomes are kind of menial salaries for $40,000-$50,000 a year, or have you. So and so what we're doing is we're kind of looking at where the skills gaps are, and really rapidly iterating on the training to get people into those jobs quickly. So it covers a broad spectrum, whether people kind of going into a career for the first time, but for a lot of people that are kind of concerned about becoming irrelevant, it gives them a practical and a cost-effective way to transition their career path into, in kind of a critical time.
And you work for the state. I know there's a contract, at least one with the state. What do you do for the state?
We've worked with the state on a couple fronts. Really, one of the main things is we've worked with the Department of Labor. So we're really trying to get apprenticeship off the ground, and so everything we do is workforce development, and it generally centers around technology. But understanding that companies that invest in people generally get a better return on those individuals in terms of loyalty, in terms of kind of the training for their needs specifically, as opposed to kind of broad strokes. So we've worked with the Department of Labor. We've worked with a lot of DOE schools to get some of the training that we do at the adult level into the schools for software development and cybersecurity. So so again, we really just kind of rapid fire. It's not always perfect, but again, the pace of business, the pace of technology doesn't wait. So we try to keep that pace.
And you're moving because you moved out of a smaller place at Manoa Innovation Center into larger quarters, so business is good.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's always evolving for sure. So we never know where it's going to go, but it's always going forward.
We all have to be okay with not knowing some things. Thank you very much, Mr. Sewell.
Thank you.
Would you pass the microphone this away to
Sure.
Ms. Yamaki? And I wanted to ask Kitty Yanone, who's from Communications Pacific. You often work with businesses in Hawaii in communicating to employees or to the public some delicate matters. Sometimes they involve changes that technology forces. What can you tell us about the advice you give?
Well, we work with a lot of companies who are going through changes. It goes back even, I remember when I first started in the 90s, a lot of the travel industry companies were making changes in technology and back then. And I know that the companies I've worked with generally have tried to warn their employees that this is coming and encourage them to be part of it, to do the training, take the jobs. And I think it's hard both ways when the employees don't want to do that, or they don't want to be around and they want to make a change. And I remember one of my clients, one of the CEOs in town, he worked so hard. He brought in counselors and he brought in everyone to try and make it appealing, but it doesn't always happen. And the good news is a lot of companies will help them find jobs if they don't want to stay and go into a new position. Their position is being eliminated. And I think it's all about communication and support and just wanting to be straightforward about it and do everything you can to make it work for everybody.
Big changes coming in retail as well. Thank you, Ms.
Absolutely.
Yanone. Retail, and Tina Yamaki, you are the president of the Retail Merchants of Hawaii.
Yes.
What changes do you expect to happen?
Well, we're already starting to see them. When you call up for customer service, a lot of times you're not talking to a person anymore. You're talking to a chat bot. But you don't know that because they sound really like a person. So when you're trying to order something or you have a complaint or want to return, it's not actually a person. We're seeing people doing virtual reality now where you take a picture of yourself and you don't have to put the clothes on. You can see, it tells you what size you are, and you can actually see what it would look like on you before you order it. Because now we're seeing a lot of people ordering online than going into the stores. And so we have to kind of find out how can we become more like of an omni-channel where you order it online, you pick it up in stores. People still want that customer service experience, but they also want it faster and quicker. So like you saw on the video, you know, they had self-checkout. We're seeing that a lot more. I believe Amazon has a store now where you don't even have to pay. You just walk in, take your stuff, and you walk out. I mean, those are some of the things that we're actually looking at, and it's coming. It's not if, it's when.
And that's a drastic reduction in the workforce
Yes,
in retail?
Yes, and you know, for retailers, we don't like to lay off our employees, but you know, with higher taxes and tariffs and employment and all of this other things that comes onto it, there's only so much that we can raise our prices. So once we can't raise it anymore, unfortunately, we start looking at technology because like some other people have said, you know, when you have machines working for you, they come on time, they don't take sick leave, you know, you can run them 24/7. You don't have to worry about all of this. So it's unfortunate, but it is the way the world is going right now.
And that's what we're here to talk about, adapting to much of what is inevitable and how to shape that change. You know, we have an online, we have online viewers, of course, as well. And we want to go up now to our social media center with Liberty Peralta to find out what the online engagement is like. Liberty?
Hi, yeah. So this general sentiment that we've been seeing online and on social media is basically, what's the big deal? We have one email that we got from Steven, and he says that, I think people blow these AI panics out of proportion. Obviously, we're going to need to adapt and change, but videos like the Growth Tribe video we saw earlier make it seem like it's a dire problem. People will adapt as we've always done, new jobs will arise and replace the ones automated, and who knows, maybe in just a few decades, everything will be so automated that we won't need to work at all. Jobs will become a thing of the past, left behind with the other obsolete things, like typewriters and fax machines. We also heard from Kapulani on Facebook, who says, I was thinking along the same lines that jobs for humans would become obsolete, freeing us up to actually enjoy doing what we love to do with those we love. Imagine that. Technology doesn't have to be something we're threatened by. It should be something that helps make life better, shouldn't it? And you know, obviously these are comments that are coming from social media, so I suppose it's expected that that the people that we're hearing from online have a certain comfort level with technology already. However, we did get this tweet from Miguel, who says, so many people in Hawaii don't understand labor's struggle, and this person's referencing the Labor 5 strike that's going on right now, because the upper middle class essentially lives in a hotel society. They're used to paying for service and help without actually needing said help, and thus don't understand what the working class goes through every day. Back to you, Leslie.
All right, thank you, Liberty. Appreciate it very much. You know, before we go any further, let's talk terms, because there are a number of disruptive technologies, you know, from the repetitive, monotonous work of many robots to the technology that scares a lot of people, and that's artificial intelligence. Which of you learned people in this room would like to give us a brief primer on what's what? Anyone to go first? What's artificial intelligence versus? All right, Jason Sewell.
So there's a lot of different viewpoints in terms of kind of where we are in terms of artificial intelligence versus machine learning. I think those are kind of the two key terms to kind of look at when you're.
Machine learning would be automation?
Machine learning is essentially the mass processing of it's the processing of massive amounts of data and analyzing that data and kind of for some kind of
so
determined
machine learning
output.
is a subset of AI?
Artificial intelligence,
Okay.
yes. So machine learning is essentially math. It's training models to analyze data much more at a scale that humans just can't do and at a pace that humans can't do. And so we're in the age of machine learning, no doubt about it. You know, but it's still a very human-driven process. It is it is a knowledge-driven process, and so kind of I think it's really feeding into the knowledge economy. But it still comes back to some of these basic skill sets that have been taught for a long time in terms of statistics, advanced math, kind of linear algebra, stuff like that. And so that is absolutely happening. Most of the stuff that you hear about artificial intelligence today is actually machine learning. Machines are actually still pretty stupid for the most part. They'll do what they're told, and that's about it. And so they're great at automation. In my lifetime, I've seen my whole lifetime has been the age of automation, I think. And so I don't see it as threatening right now, but intelligence is, humans are intelligent beings, and I'm probably not going to use the right terminology, but in terms of having compassion, having the ability to analyze context around you and make decisions based on that, computers are still not really good at that, and academia, still is struggling with that.
When you say still, this implies that things will change. How quickly?
I don't know. Some of the material I've read about AI is that some of the problems they have today they were trying to solve these problems in like the 80s and 90s, and they went into something, I forget the term, but it was the kind of artificial intelligence freeze. Is kind of funding at the academic level kind of dried up because they weren't making a lot of progress, and then really in the last five to 10 years, it's really kind of sped up again. But things get sensationalized a lot. The chatbots again are machine learning. They're not intelligent. They've just analyzed a lot of conversations, and they know how to kind of respond based on if you analyze 1 million conversations, you know how to respond to a very common question. And so that's not intelligence, that's modeling. And so that's, I don't know, time-wise, from what I've heard, AI is still a ways off. So
any other thoughts on that? Artificial intelligence? Josh?
Yes. So I have a question for you, but I'm going to preface it just slightly. So Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov in chess. Watson beat Ken Jennings in Jeopardy badly. A team of scientists, computer scientists, put together a program that beat the world's greatest Go player, which is arguably the most complex game ever devised by humans. So what I hear you saying is machines are not quite smart yet, but all the evidence that I'm picking up over the last 2 years or 3 years is that, wow, it's happening really fast, and that we need to really pay attention to how quickly consciousness in machines is coming up on us. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think consciousness is the key word. I don't think that those systems have consciousness yet. What all of those games have is a finite set of moves and strategies. And so that's really is, to my understanding at least, I'm not an expert, but that's what those machines get, is they've analyzed gameplay in almost any scenario possible. And so, analyzing, you can run, just millions and millions of games through Watson in hours or days, right? And so people have taken years of their life to perfect their craft, but they're still learning all the time. And so, but they haven't even played a fraction of what Watson can play in probably a matter of weeks or months in their life.
So there's in terms of Garry Kasparov and Ken Jennings with Watson, I think I would agree with you that that it's a series of algorithms, and it's just how quickly the machine can do what humans are doing. But with the Go player, and there's, by the way, we're not supposed to be watching Netflix, but there's an awesome Netflix documentary called AlphaGo, inspiring in human terms, frightening in machine terms, intelligence terms, AI terms. What appeared to happen to this Korean Go player was that the machine that was playing him became intuitive and began to make moves that even the Korean Go player hadn't thought of yet. In other words, it was thinking on its feet.
Yeah, they're getting better. Like I said, to the best of my knowledge, is that these are still kind of finite. There's only so many kind of strategies. So there is a finite set where maybe I think when we're talking about artificial intelligence, kind of and sentient beings, is we don't have a machine that's going to make the game, or something like that, or really sense the emotion of the other player, right? And maybe they're out strategizing, but maybe not.
We have one comment across the aisle on this.
Well,
Dr.
it actually
Hines?
makes me want to think I'm an educator, and so I think about what schools are doing to sort of address what we're talking about. And if I think about my experience in school, it was about knowing things. It's sort of the same thing you're talking about AI right now. It's a series of procedures: learn syntax, learn mathematical procedures, learn scientific rules. But there was very little opportunity for us to think about how we use that. And I think the educators in this room, we're all working on right now is the part that is missing from those algorithms that the computer is doing, which is how do you apply that information? And I think we're providing learning environments that are changing that. Instead of having kids and adults for that matter just know a set of rules and how to apply them, or how they work in certain situations, opening up the possibility for how that gets expressed through robotics or through programming challenges, things that require original solutions, and that pushes learners to do a very different thing, which gives them a wider range of skills of, as the video talked about, a growth mindset, that I can figure out how to solve problems. I don't need someone to tell me how to do it. So I think it's interesting that the parallel between where machines are at and what traditional education was sort of trained to do, learn a set of rules, is now transforming to a different way to think about how we look at education and the opportunities to grow the human mind.
Okay, I think there'll be more on this to come. We're not done with this, I believe. What we all want to know right now, though, is when and who, and is my job safe, and for how long? Well, it won't happen overnight, but we need to be prepared. The World Economic Forum predicts 65% of children entering grade school today will ultimately end up working in completely new job types that don't yet exist. So between now and then, about 20 years or more from now, what kinds of jobs might be most at risk? According to McKinsey & Company, up to 30% of the hours worked globally could be automated by 2030. Activities most vulnerable to automation include physical ones in predictable environments, such as operating machinery and preparing fast food. Collecting and processing data are two other categories of activities that increasingly can be done better and faster with machines. This could displace large amounts of labor, for example, in mortgage origination, paralegal work, accounting, and of course, back office transaction processing. And which jobs will be more difficult to replace with robots and artificial intelligence? According to Fortune magazine, the hardest activities to automate with the technologies available today are those that involve managing and developing people, where expertise is applied to decision-making, planning, or creative work, or interacting with customers, suppliers, and other stakeholders. And yet, if there is an algorithm that a computer can exercise, as you've heard, some of those jobs involving human discernment and judgment could go away. Let me share some fresh information with you from the State Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, breaking out the 662,000 jobs in sector based on data from last month. The vast majority of our workforce falls under the services providing sectors. As of last month, that was 612,000 jobs in Hawaii. This is a breakdown of where our workforce could be the most impacted. Within that group, we do see employment blocks that are linked to activities said to be vulnerable to automation. Now, if just 30% of these 317,000 jobs in food service, accommodations, and other services were taken over by automation in 10 to 20 years, well, that's more than 95,000 jobs lost in just 5 employment sectors. And we're told that's conservative information. A projected loss of 95,000 jobs is staggering. The state's Chief Information and Innovation Officer is with us tonight, and that's Todd Seto. Nice to have you tonight.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about what the state is doing to address this?
So there's a lot of initiatives going on with the state. Our biggest initiative is obviously around sustainability. As you know, Governor Ige was the first governor to sign up to have a 100% renewable goal by 2045. And we know that that technology doesn't exist today. That's why the state has also set a goal of having 80,000 tech jobs paying $80,000 by 2030. Because in order for us to reach that sustainable goal, we have to have the workforce, the people to perform and come up with these tools or these innovations to help us reach that goal. And so the state's moving forward in that in that way for us to find a fourth sector of our economy, if you will, to move away from maybe tourism being the dominant force. If you think about this, for us being an island state, and we really see how globally we're impacted by climate change, focusing on sustainability, focusing on job growth in this area can really lead to a lot of new industry, a lot of new jobs here in Hawaii. And the state's very focused on that. A lot of the things that we're doing are all around sustainability.
Any thoughts from others on this? Are we prepared? What steps are we taking? Are they the right ones? Ms. Wu.
My name's Nicole Wu. I work for Hawaii Appleseed, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about automation as another way to talk about productivity. We've seen the workforce change due to technology when the printing presses came and when farm workers went to the factories and when the secretaries were replaced by computers. So this has happened before. Back in 1930, a famous economist said that we would be down to 15-hour work weeks by now because he looked at the Industrial Revolution and he saw that more workers were producing more things and we'd get more leisure time. He just assumed the gains from technology would go to the workers. But we haven't been seeing that here. So I think we have to always remember that technology has always been here. It can be used for good reasons or it could be used for bad. In places like Europe, they've decided to give workers 6 months or a year of paid family leave when they have a new baby. And they have mandated a month or 2 months of paid vacation every year. So while workers in Europe don't make more money than we do, they work less hours. So just to think about automation is another way to talk about making each worker more productive. And if workers could actually get those gains, then they might not have to work 2 or 3 jobs. Or, I've heard that 45% of working moms wish they could work part-time. We could do that. And we could have kapuna care. We have an aging workforce. All of these automation technologies can help us with that future shrinking of our workforce. So, losing these jobs doesn't necessarily mean people are unemployed. It might mean the work can be spread out more and people have more free time.
And how do they support themselves with free time?
They would get paid the same because each worker is producing more per hour. So what we saw from about, let's say, World War II to the 1970s, the amount of work per worker about doubled, and so did pay. But since the 1970s, productivity has increased while worker wages have just been flat. So the gains from technology have been going up to the top. They've been going to like corporate stocks and CEO pay. And so part of the question about technology has to be, because it is coming, how do we share the gains of the technology to make sure that, regular people who have to work 2 or 3 jobs, maybe they don't have to anymore, or maybe they'll work 4 days a week and they don't have to commute all the time, or they can take time off when they have a new baby. So just to remind people that technology doesn't have to always be a scary thing. If our society chooses to use it in a way that lets our workers have more time with their families, which I think most of us would like to have.
As you know, there is a hotel strike going on right now, and the issue of wages has gotten the most attention. But the threat of technology to jobs is also part of this action. The New York Times recently published this story about Marriott hotels elsewhere using technology to do work that people used to do. From Local 5, Jean Teo Gibney, you're a member of the negotiating team, which is meeting tomorrow, and you're
that is correct.
Front desk clerk, long time at the
for
Royal
30
Hawaiian
years
Hotel.
at Royal Hawaiian Hotel front desk. Sorry, my voice from chanting. But we're not against technology, but that is one of the things that is on the table. We want to be partners in the decision making and not be left behind. We're for technology for our housekeepers. A lot of times the carts are extremely heavy, difficult to push. So to have an electronic cart, yes, we would support that. Have a robot that could lift the mattresses that won't break their backs. Yes, we're for that. For computers that are swifter, we would love that too. And even talking about kiosk or robots, that might be fun for a kid or even an adult. But to totally replace a front desk crew, people don't come to Hawaii to look at a robot or a kiosk. When someone gets off of a long flight, screaming kid that's been in the back of your chair, kicking your chair throughout that whole flight. You know, we have guests that come and just a few kind words just turns their whole attitude around. You know, the hospitality industry, Hawaii is very dependent upon that. And after reading the article that came out in the New York Times and the remarks and comments from many of the guests, our visitors that come back again and again, it's because of the service that we provide. You know, automation and technology can't provide that, but that can help do our jobs better, where people are not working multiple jobs just to survive. The amount of revenue, Hawaii, we have the highest room revenue in the nation, highest in the nation. When you look at what the CEO makes compared to what the medium worker makes, it's more than 398 to 1. There's a big imbalance there. So, you know, we want to be partners in decision making. So that's just one of the things that our strike is all about.
You know, you mentioned in that article that Marriott in China has developed facial recognition that allows the hotel to check people in without having a front desk clerk like you. Do you think that would work in Hawaii with our, our calling card is culture and the personal touch? Do you think that would work?
You're
not the
really
person to ask.
know.
You know what, Jean? I'm going to ask someone else about that one.
Okay.
Conflict of interest. Dean Nakasone, and you have a conflict of interest too, so we'll just adjust, okay? You're a long-time veteran of the hotel industry. In fact, you were the general manager of a number of Waikiki hotels, and now you're the VP of the Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association. Would you please tell us your interpretation of what's going on with technology and the hotel industry?
Well, first thing I wanted to do is, well, thank you for this opportunity, and we all hope that strike settles soon. Yes. But as far as your question on China, I agree that people don't come to Hawaii and expect to see a robot checking them in and serving them food and checking them out and all that stuff. I think the perfect solution would be combining the high tech with high touch, and I think that's what Hawaii should be, has always been, and should be, and continue to be all about going forward. You know, technology is just something you can avoid. The very first job I had in the hotel business was at a switchboard, and I had to plug the incoming and the call into the switchboard. And I think half of the people in this room don't even know what I'm talking about. But things evolve, and but you have to evolve with it. You know, technology is not going to be stopped. But you know, listening to everybody in this room about how high tech everything is, I feel like our industry is probably low tech, but it's a selling point. You know, we don't want to become fully automated. It just wouldn't make for the experience that people look forward to having when they spend lots of money and come to Hawaii on a vacation. So somehow we have to work together and combine the technology with the human element.
When you say we have to work together, who's we?
We meaning the hotel industry, with all the service industries, and even with retail and food service. I think ultimately the customer will decide. If you want fast food, if you want to go to that McDonald's in Phoenix, I didn't even know about that. But
self-serve airlines, you can not really talk to a person and get on a plane, pretty much.
Pretty much, you're right. And I think all of us struggled with that when it first came out. I mean, I certainly did. I was looking for the human to tell me how to check in with the kiosk. But now we've all become acclimated with that. And I think going forward, there'll be a few things in the hotel industry that will become more and more automated. But overall, Hawaii is not somewhere that I think people expect to see lots of technology. Maybe in other parts of the world like China or big cities on the mainland where people want to get in and out real quick. Maybe they're happy to swipe their credit card and go to their room, but I don't see that happening in Hawaii, not in the immediate future anyway. And to echo someone's point, tourism's been the big 800-pound gorilla here, and we need to continue to recognize that and nurture that. If tourism is healthy, then I think we will get to the sustainability goals, the 2045 goals that the governor had put forth. But we need to continue to nurture tourism along the way for all of us to hit our goals.
There's a great irony, I think, and I want to ask you about this, Ms. Teo Gibney. many low-wage jobs were not targeted for technology because they were low wage. It would cost money to invest in technology. You're asking, the union is seeking more money. Your chant is one job to pay the bills, right? So you don't have to work multiple jobs. You get more money, and then do you get targeted with computers and software?
Correct. Yeah, so as you know, tourism does make a lot of money, and this is a billion-dollar industry. So why not share the profits with the people who help you make all that money? And we're wanting to keep our medical, our dental, our pension benefits. This has been very challenging to be out on strike now on week 3, and it took a while before the company even reached out to us to come and sit at the table for negotiations. So we just want to have a say how technology is used. We want fair severance, or if someone has to be displaced, training. We ask for training, or please sit down with us. We would like to learn these things. Technology doesn't always work. I love it in the medical field. It's wonderful. It's fabulous. But is it really, should it really be in the hospitality industry? When technology breaks down, what happens then when things go dark? I mean, just before coming here, going to Walmart, I couldn't even use my credit card. They can't manually punch it in. So luckily, I have cash. How many of us carry cash now? Because the majority of us have cards instead. So.
You and Ms. Wu have mentioned this polarity in wealth, and I want to ask we have an economist in the house, that would be Dr. LaCroix. What are you seeing in terms of economy, of this strata happening?
Well, from the economic perspective, one of the things that we see, and this is more nationwide than in Hawaii, there really hasn't been a Hawaii study done of this, but what we're seeing is that automation is leading to a replacement of the job skills in the middle. And many of those job skills are ones where people can sit down and talk to somebody and tell them what they know. And when you can tell them what they know, people can write it down and they can make an algorithm out of it. And those are the jobs that are disappearing. Okay, jobs at the lower skilled jobs at the lower end of the spectrum are harder to replace. It's harder to replace a waiter. It's not impossible. We certainly see it. Nico's, if you go there for lunch, you go up to the counter, you order your food, you get a buzzer, you go and you pick up the food. You're the waiter. Most people, when they go out to a restaurant, though, would like to have a waiter or waitress there. So what we're finding is that the share of jobs in the low-skilled area is expanding. The share of jobs in the high-skilled area is expanding. It's the middle that's disappearing. Of course, this is the old problem, too, of the declining middle class. So what's happening, though, is that the automation of these skills in the middle of the job spectrum is actually helping people at the upper end of the job spectrum. They're finding that their productivity increases because they're not getting these automated things. So a doctor is finding that, these test results are coming in from your lab, and that those test results are much more accurate. They come at a consistent pace. They're not running into some of the problems they had before. So the doctor's productivity goes up. Doctor's productivity goes up, their income is going to go up. So what we're finding is at the upper end of the skill spectrum, people are doing really well. Now, throughout U.S. history, and this is also true for Hawaii, when people have done really well at some things, usually then people say, okay, what skills do I need to get to enter that profession? Okay, and so what we find is education chases technology. If people see that they need more skills to basically enter into a particular a profession because of the technology, they get them. I mean, in Hawaii at the mid-20th century, people basically decide, I'm going to get a high school education. And then the second half of the 20th century was like, okay, I'm going to get a college education or a postgraduate degree, or I'm at least going to get some community college. So we're seeing all those types of things going on. One interesting thing for Hawaii is that women are still doing this. We're finding that women basically are going out and getting this extra education. Men, it's stalling. Men, for some reason, are just not getting the extra education. And that's been a bit of a drag in some ways on the Hawaii economy, that we're finding that men are not going out and getting the extra education. Why that is not really all that well understood. But this is a nationwide phenomenon, not just here in Hawaii.
And what's the fate of the middle class in terms of pay and keeping even with wages?
Well, that's a good question. We don't really know what the future is going to be. If more and more of these jobs are routinized, we're likely to see those jobs disappear. The only thing that I would note is that many of the jobs that we have today, we didn't even think about in the future. I mean, I remember when I went to graduate school in Seattle, that the two big industries in Seattle at the time were Boeing and the University of Washington, where I went to school. And then today you go to Washington, you go to Seattle, and what you find is, oh, there's Amazon. Oh, there's Microsoft, this massive international corporation. Oh, Boeing has expanded in some ways. There's also Costco with its headquarters just outside the city. So many of the jobs that are there in Seattle today, those corporations, people weren't even thinking about them. Microsoft hadn't been founded. There was no Costco. There was no Amazon. And yet all those firms basically then brought whole new jobs into Seattle. Now, is there some hope for Hawaii? I think one place of real optimism for us, I'm trying to strike an optimistic note, one place of real optimism for us is we are now closer to other markets. We're much closer to other people than we ever have been before because of the internet, because of technological change. I can now in the morning call up a co-author, okay, on Skype, and sit there and we can pass information back and forth on Skype. We can have a discussion as if they were here in Honolulu. And that's increased my productivity tremendously. I mean, I don't have to travel to see my co-authors. My co-authors don't have to travel to see me. And I basically try to get the best co-authors I can find for any given project anywhere in the world. Okay, so that's meant that researchers' productivity at places like the University of Hawaii or other campuses in the Hawaii system has gone up. That's a really great thing.
But
and I think
does that translate
that's applied
to
to other
wages?
types of industries of this type. And we don't necessarily know where those jobs are going to be. We don't really know which industries are going to be. Is it going to be the entertainment industry? We're certainly seeing a bit of an uptick in entertainment jobs, but certainly there's a lot of entertainment jobs that people can do from here. And then as long as they have access to a service such as Skype, there's many other services too, then they can do those jobs here.
I'm interested in the middle class and in the lower, the lower wage folks and the people who can't really get jobs. And I'm seeing Norm Baker from Aloha United Way look thoughtfully at this.
We just completed a study at Aloha United Way called ALICE. It stands for Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed. And what the study identified is that just under a half, actually 48% of the folks that live here live paycheck to paycheck. They are not able to save. They are one little financial crisis, like a car breakdown, from being in a lot of trouble, spiraling down into poverty. We believe at Aloha United Way, all the folks here that are involved with education, you're talking about we're going to reskill people, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But I think you said earlier on, Leslie, 95,000 jobs are likely to be lost in this community in the next how many years?
Even if we have higher productivity.
Exactly. So what are we going to do? How are we going to reskill, train 95,000 people to keep them from getting into this ALICE spiral? It's we believe, and I kind of disagree with Dr. LaCroix, the middle skills is a place where I think there's growth. Has anybody here tried to hire an electrician lately? Yeah, the smiles and the giggles, because you're probably looking at 6 weeks to get an electrician to come out to your home. Why? Because there's not many of them around. There are skills like that, welders, electricians, finished carpenters, firemen, policemen. They pay.
Plumbing seems pretty sexy.
Plumbing, yeah. They pay good wages. People in those professions actually earn a living wage. And yet there is a sense, I think, in our schools that when somebody reaches their senior year in high school and opts to go into plumbing or go into being a policeman, that somehow the system has failed because it hasn't pushed them into college. I think that's wrong. I think what we need to do is help kids who see a different path in their lives get that kind of training. I think the community college system is going to be incredibly important over the next 5 or 10 years, helping us get through this 95,000 jobs that are going to go away. We actually, Aloha United Way, are funding 5 or 6 programs in the next 3 years aimed entirely at that, and they're calling them the middle skills. Let's take folks that are coming out of high school and want those kinds of jobs, push them into training that will get them into those middle skills.
Well, I think of all the career fairs that are held, usually in 7th grade. If you have a child, you go to their school career fair. Are we telling them the right things to examine and to look at? Are they being properly prepared at that level? Professor DePillis, nice to have you here from the Neighbor Island.
Thank you so much. Yes, I kind of want to focus on something that we've been dancing around a little bit, but I see this. I teach seniors, college seniors who are going out into the workforce, and the fact is there are more people than jobs, and there are more qualified people than there are good jobs. If you go to the Department of Labor website and you look at what percent of jobs really require a college degree, it's like 21%. But we're doing 55 by 25. We want to get 55% of people with college degrees by 2025. That does not magically make more good jobs spring up like mushrooms. What it does is it makes employers raise their expectations so that they feel like, well, I should be able to get someone with a college degree who will accept, a non-secure job and maybe won't ask for too much money, because we already have such an oversupply. We've really seen it the most, I think, in law degrees. That law education has really cratered in the last decade. But I think, I believe in education. I think education is wonderful. I believe in lifelong learning. But we can't individually educate ourselves out of this without looking at the bigger picture and seeing how we're going to share the wealth and make sure there are enough good jobs to go around.
I see.
I think you hit on something really important, Mr. Baker, about maybe looking at other careers that are out there, that there are other possibilities besides what we've been taught to go to high school, graduate, and then go on to college. That's what's going to make you successful. I mean, how many of you out here know what Fortnite is? I'm sure all of your children play it. And we have some kids here. I bet you know who Ninja and Daquan is on Fortnite. Ninja makes over $6 million a month streaming, right, on video games. And a lot of parents look at that and say, I don't want my child playing video games because it's disruptive. It's not part of that traditional career path, right? But if we look at other things, other ways that education may not fit, or these kids that don't necessarily fit the mold, that there are opportunities out there. We just have to be able to educate them and provide them that pathway, show them that there's other ways to do things if that traditional four-year college doesn't work for them. Like I said, Ninja's making $6 million a month streaming video games. Right?
Can I ask you though, how many jobs like that are there? How many kids can do that?
So there was a statistic that came out on Twitch, YouTube, and you're right, there's only like the top 3% are actually making over $10,000 a month on it. But again, that's just a new medium that came out. Twitch isn't even more than 3 years old, right? There's a lot of things that are developing and coming out. And I'm not saying you have to be a video game streamer, right? There's a lot of different things that are out there that people are streaming. I mean, they're opening pearls online now and saying, hey, buy this, right? There's just a lot of creative things that maybe we should try to look at and educate and let our children see there's other opportunities besides going to that traditional route.
Mr. Miyashiro, you're nodding, and you work with so many kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us in our work at Hawaii Kids Can, the question I always ask is, how can we look beyond the survival aspect to look to thrive? So I actually got started in looking at computer science for all when I read about what was happening in New Mexico. So there was an organization called, it was Cultivating Coders. What they did that I thought was so cool is they found folks who could teach computer science, and they took them to Native American reservations. And these are in some of those rural parts of the state. And kids always had this eternal question, which was, do I feel the pressure to leave my home and my community and my culture and go pursue these other opportunities, or do I stay and feel like I'm trapped? Now, technology has kind of eliminated that barrier for those kids. And I think for a lot of our kids, especially on the neighbor islands, we could see some similar things. If we could go to Hana and Kākou and really train around these skills that are marketable in demand, I think that can make a huge difference. And when you look at states like Florida and Colorado, they're doing some really smart things in modernizing and kind of flipping on the head career and technical education. So they're not having DOE and schools guess at what industry needs. They're going to industry and saying, what will make our kids marketable tomorrow? And then industry is giving them the list of these credentials, so not a 4-year college degree, not even a 2-year college degree, but actual industry credentials that are in demand, and it's from industry itself, and those are being offered in the schools. So similarly, I think that if we're willing to kind of rethink our approach to career and technical education and think about in terms of college and career, with career being valuable as well, I think we could do some amazing things in Hawaii.
Can I piggyback for a second on that? So David, I love what you said, but I'm going to take one exception to one thing that you said. We don't need to take anything to HANA. HANA needs to come out and show us what they're already doing, which is one of the most remarkable things that you'd ever hope to see in public education in the United States of America. Just nobody knows about it because there's this relentless negative media coverage of what happens in our public schools, and it's very much related to college track and whether you reach those benchmarks and whether that April issue of Honolulu Magazine you're going to be at the bottom or the top and all of that. But what's happening on HANA is almost a perfect storm of community and school partnerships that come together, and the kids who are like a third of the campus at HANA is built by the kids. The buildings are built by the kids. And they are ready to come out and show the rest of us what this means. And so I think, it's important to acknowledge what our bright lights are.
And that's a restructured public school that was doing poorly before.
Right, absolutely.
And has been doing very well. Ms. Dollier, you have a comment?
Thank you. I'm Deanna Dollier. I work for the Hawaii Association of Independent Schools. And, another topic I think we've been dancing around a little bit, and I'm sure so many of my colleagues here could speak better to it than I can, but what we mean by education. So I think that's something that we've been talking about, and we're talking about skills, and we're talking about career readiness and college readiness, but we're not talking about what we mean by educating students. And I think that's at the heart of this. So we talk about, we're moving out of an education system that is very much driven by the industrial era. We're moving away from a productivity type model, and we're moving into something that what I see here in Hawaii, which is wonderful, is that it's student-centered, it's student-driven, to the example of HANA, to what David Miyashiro is doing with Hawaii Kids Can, and so many of my colleagues here. But I think that that's kind of at the heart of this conversation right now, is what we mean when we say we need to educate students. And I'm not going to answer that, but I do think that that's central to this question. And I think everybody here is touching on that in a different sort of way. But I do think at the center of that is critical thinking. I think that beyond that, we're thinking about another topic that hasn't come up is social emotional learning, and that goes into the hotel industry and so much of the other work that we do here in Hawaii. That's something that's cropping up all over in our schools, and I think that that's critical also to something that, the future of work, we're talking about that. Something that can't be automated is those that empathetic nature in humans, and what that will mean for the workforce. Creativity. I mean, the arts haven't come into this conversation, but that's another aspect of what I think we need to be refocusing on, and that can't be automated.
Thanks, Ms. Dollier. The online world is engaging on this too. We want to go back to Liberty Peralta in our social media center. Liberty, what are you hearing?
Well, earlier this week, we asked a series of questions to our social media audience, and one of them was, how young is too young to learn code? And we got a few comments from Instagram. Alvaro.808 says, kids are never too young to begin learning a new language, even if it's a computer language. The earlier, the better. We also heard from the High Sand Lows on Instagram, never too young. I wished I learned when I was younger because the learning curve gets harder the older you get. We also heard from Joseph, I am just 11 and I'm learning code. And also Sandy Kameli on Facebook, she says, mahalo PBS Hawaii for the discussion. We need to change our mindset from what technology is doing to us to what can technology do for us. Let's hear from the educators on the panel who have exciting examples from the classroom. If you have thoughts on this topic, you can join the conversation on our Facebook live stream or tweet us on or send us a tweet on Twitter or post a comment on Instagram using the hashtag PBS Kākou, or you can email us at insights@pbshawaii.org. Back to you.
Thank you, Liberty. We will indeed be hearing from educators. First, students, though. PBS Hawaii Hikino student journalists are considered Generation Z. They'll have a front row seat to observe and participate in this fourth industrial revolution. We asked some of them who are recent high school graduates if they find this revolution to be exciting or does it concern them?
I'm going into media communications, so there definitely is an uncertainty on the sort of jobs that will be available for me after college. But that is something that I'm willing to embrace, knowing that we as humans offer this character unlike any technology can offer.
And I feel like that's what a lot of people are scared of, is the fact that they think that robots will take control, but they need to remember that we're the ones putting in the data.
But I just don't want to see it become a crutch, like us get so dependent on technology that we don't know how to function for ourselves, you know?
I mean, I was going into accounting and management, kind of worried, but not too worried. I think, you know, with it being a business thing, you need to go out and meet people, and you need to build relationships with that person, and I think that part I'm not too worried about.
It is exciting because we're making new technological advances, we're learning new things, and robots can do so much that we can't as humans. But it does concern me because it will take over many jobs, such as restaurants or construction, even tourism maybe.
I feel that for someone who is on the path of becoming a teacher, we're always learning. As human beings, I'm kind of worried, yet I'm excited for that to happen because, one, we're getting more information and knowledge for us, our children, to learn. But at the same time, I want to still keep that compassion and that fire of interest to teach that topic to the kids and students.
We're getting one step ahead into the future, but in terms of the workforce, then that is a very concerning thought. You know, it's taking a lot of other people's jobs, and it's just kind of scary in that sense. But it's also artificial intelligence. It lacks abstract and creative thinking, and also interpersonal skills and soft skills such as communication or having empathy, which are basically things that are essential in the workplace. You know, you kind of need those interpersonal skills to have a balanced, I guess, business or company.
I think it's definitely a good idea for Hawaii to take a leadership place in the field of artificial intelligence. I think there's this strange stigma that kids in Hawaii aren't, you know, as smart or motivated or fast-paced as kids in the mainland, which is not true at all. So I think we could easily apply and then flourish within technology fields like artificial intelligence.
And let's talk to students who are a few years younger than these college freshmen. From Aliamanu Middle School, we have two students from our Hikino program, Mariah Wiggins and Fred Halweeny. Mariah, as you listen to us, what are you thinking? What would you say to the same question that the college students were asked?
I'm thinking that most of us as 8th graders or young children are thinking that technology may scare us and it may be new to us because this is what we're growing up to, and that technology may take over things that we won't be able to remember that we do every day, and it can't be replaced.
You know, you weren't even nervous walking into this live studio setting. I don't know what you're afraid of. Not public speaking. Any advice for other 8th graders?
I would just say just let everything fall into place.
All right, let's ask your classmate Fred, what do you think, exciting or threatening?
I feel like it's a little bit of both, because it's threatening in the way that, like she said, we might forget the things that we are doing now, but it's cool to think that in the future, like, we won't have to do some of the things that we think are hard, and it'll just be overall easier and make our lives easier and better.
I see. And your teacher, Chris Fakuri, thank you for bringing your students here.
Yeah, well, they brought me down.
and what would you tell their parents about what they should be doing?
Well, as educators, I think our job is to, guide them, because this talk about technology and things like that. We got to remember it's just a tool, and in the hands of these guys, it's just amazing what they do. And that's the thing that AI or whatever cannot, replicate is creativity. And these guys are just taking off with it. Like with the Hikino program, all these students that produce these amazing stories and shows, they're doing it on their own, and they're just, I mean, I just can't, fathom doing that at my age, at their age, way back when. And I always got to remind them that the things that we use now with all this technology, that was our science fiction way back when we were kids, and we could only dream of this kind of stuff. And our job is to make sure that they're not scared of that technology, but they're gonna take off with it. I mean, they're our future.
Thank you very much. And I'd sure like to hear about whether we're going to set limits on technology as well. Right now, we want to let you know that word of this town hall resulted in immediate and enthusiastic response from educators. Many want to get students ready for a new world. And we'd like to hear from all of you educators here. But let's start with 3 teachers who are introducing grade school students to this new world of technology that'll have such an impact on their futures. Some students are learning how to write code, or the programming language that creates computer software. Other students are directing their robots with a swipe of their iPad screens. We want to start with Greg Kent from Kailua Elementary School. And would you explain what you're doing in your classroom? And we have some video to share as well.
Sure. So I'm at Kailua Elementary School, and our 2nd graders in the video are building and programming robots together with a partner. And I think the emphasis is with a partner. And they start off kind of having a shared experience, everyone in the class building and programming. And then from there, they have to make it their own. And so we'll either give them a design challenge or some less structured time where they're allowed to kind of find things out on their own. And a lot of times when I ask them, who are you going to ask for help? And the teacher. And I'm like, no, the guy next to you that's one step ahead. And so that's kind of what we try to encourage them to do, is we give them a little bit, and then we kind of create an environment where they can kind of build and make mistakes and kind of pivot and try again, and so that they figure out strategies to be successful.
Which means you as the teacher are not the control freak, dictator, you got to do it my way, rigid guy.
Can't be. You can't be. It doesn't work. Or else they just look at you instead of figuring out and talking to their neighbor.
And do you think they'll just adapt? I mean, what do you think their futures will be? Will they go into STEM professionally, or do you think they see more options than that?
I hope they see more options. My daughter's in that class, so I hope they have a ton of options.
Okay.
She right now wants to be a ballet teacher, so we'll see.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Kent. From Momilani Elementary School, Shane Asselstein. And
Hi.
And by the way, Momilani's in Pearl City. I have to say we have a really high concentration of viewers in Pearl City, so I have to say hi and thank you. Would you tell us about your class? And we have video to share as well.
Yeah, so it was great to have you guys over there. What we have been doing with Momilani is moving towards a K-6 computer science program. And at first we get a lot of looks sometimes about you're teaching kindergartners. You know, this is actually I believe this was my 4th grade class. And we don't necessarily need to always use the robots. We don't always use the technology. Sometimes, like in this class, they're actually going to use a deck of cards to learn about conditionals. So understand that concept using hands-on things such like that. A lot of times we joke about my room looking like a Vegas showroom because I have dice and I have cards and I don't have any gambling chips, so we're okay there. But we do have 3D printers. We could make some if we wanted to. So, but yeah, these kids are actually learning concepts. You can see that we've changed our desks from rows and columns to these collaborative areas. Those desks can actually fold up, move out, so we can actually have a robotics floor as well. So we're creating a flexible environment. I've been given a very small room, but I'm using it to the maximum potential that I can. When we talk about kindergartners, we have kindergartners creating basic apps to teach each other about the colors of the rainbow. My daughter, when she was in kindergarten, she actually wrote one about sleepovers, rules for sleepovers. I'm not kind of nervous about that one, so I wasn't really, let's not follow that one up. Anyway, but it was great to see that she could conceptually understand that. And as a matter of fact, about 2 weeks ago, she asked, can we continue to do more stories? So she sees that as an avenue for her to be creative, which is great. And, we want more kids to exposed to that. So that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Asselstein. We'll have here from Puna on Hawaii Island, Aisha Tanaka from Kekula o Navahio Kalani Upu'u Charter School. It's in the Kia'au area. Asia. Would you tell us, you're using the voice of technology, but also the Hawaiian voice.
Yes, so we teach our students in Hawaiian, so Hawaiian medium, that's how they learn. And with teaching this new class on coding, last year we started it, I feel like the goal was a bit different because it wasn't we weren't afraid, like I'm gonna do this because I'm afraid that my students are not gonna be prepared. It was saying that they have a cultural foundation and a language foundation, and I want to give them as much information as possible so they can navigate through a changing world. And I always hear like, we're so afraid and we have to change because of technology, but I don't agree with that. I feel like we decide where technology goes, and we decide how we're going to use it and who it's going to benefit. And the students just need a foundation. They need to know what their goal is. If their goal is to make money or to make life so simple that they don't have to work, I don't agree with that. I don't think that it should be, oh, we don't have to work, we don't have to do anything. No way, no. It has to be, I'm trying to do something to benefit my community, and I'm trying to preserve my culture and my language and use all that I have to keep it going. So as we're teaching, yes, we're teaching coding and those skills, but those skills benefit our students because it gives them more knowledge to use later on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. How do you say coding in Hawaiian?
Pa'alua, pa'alua.
That's amazing. And what are the root words of that?
I never asked. That's the truth. I'm so sorry. I have never asked. But I talked to my principal, and she talked to her akane, and they discussed it, and they decided. So I trust that they really did their research on that one.
Yeah, that's a sensitive matter and goes through protocol.
But mahalo nui for asking
Thank
that.
you,
Yeah.
Ms. Tanaka. We have other educators here, and I just wonder if they'd like to share with us projects they're working on. Mid-Pacific Institute is a key leader. Mr. Art Kimura is, okay, I know you don't like when I say this, but you're the father of robotics in Hawaii, Waialua High School, and now you've moved on to many things with the Hawaii.
Thank you for saying father, not grandfather.
Yeah, you have an amazing record, and you're still going strong, training in STEM at the UH.
This is a great opportunity. Saturday, I returned from Tokyo, Japan. So along with 5 schools from Hawaii, we attended the World Robot Summit in Tokyo. It was 5 exhibition halls of real-world robotics. The application of what these students are doing now in the classroom applied to a real sector. So you see health robots, home care robots, robots that cover every sector of our economy. And as I stood there, last year I went also, you kind of know the future is going to be about students being able to reinvent themselves constantly throughout their lives. We need to provide the proper skill set, which really means basic life skills for students, learning so that they experience communication skills, teamwork skills, problem-solving skills, thinking skills, and really important, integrity. They have to learn how to do this fairly so that although sometimes there's competitions, they're doing it in the right way. I think good examples of robotics are these 2 young women sitting behind me. Adria Fung from St. Louis School had a team at the World Robot Summit and actually competed there with her students. So want to share some things, Adria?
Sure. My group of 3 students just competed at the World Robot Summit, and they competed in the junior category. It was a team of middle school students, and so they range from ages 12 to 14. And so they actually competed against high school students from Japan, Australia, Philippines. And these students, they had to create a robot that could help solve a problem in home. And so that was the challenge that they were given. And so my challenge to my students was that you have to create a robot that not necessarily could just solve any problem in home. You have to be able to solve a problem for someone. It's ultimately for that person to use. It's not for the robot to use, it's for that person. And so they talked to teachers in classrooms, they talked to their family members, and they came up with a robot that could emulate a Swiffer. And so they actually created kind of a sweeping robot for that challenge. And these students got such an amazing experience in Japan. They were exposed to such amazing robots, solving problems for real life challenges, which is kind of what it's all about. And so I always have to try to remind all of my students in all my classes and my robotics team that we're designing these robots for people, not for the technology itself.
Wow, interesting. Swiffer, and we, I don't know a lot of people demanding to clean my house anyway. So thank you, Ms. Fung and Mr. Kimura and Mark Hines, Dr. Mark Hines from Mid-Pacific Institute. Your school gets rave reviews for its use of technology and sharing of technology. What are you up to?
So it's interesting. I think about the video we saw at the beginning, and the word that went up there that I think is central to this is about growth mindset. Because whether we're talking about retraining a workforce that the world is changing and maybe there's a different set of skills, or preparing kids for their future, like many schools, Mid-Pacific, technology is a tool, and we use a lot of the technologies that we've said, but we're also an arts school because we believe when students create and design, when they choreograph, when they publish, when they solve problems, when they represent, those are opportunities for them to develop the resiliency it takes to say, this didn't work, how do I make it new? How can I try to improve on an idea? And so for those of you that just say STEM, we also like STEAM and we like STREAM, adding the arts, adding the literacy components. Those are all parts that are lending themselves to prepare students to see themselves as creators, not consumers in this new economy. And that's where they're the most flexible workforce that they need to be in a dynamic world where we can't predict all the jobs that they might need to have and the skills, but they feel ready for them.
Thank you. I see another former student of Mr. Kimura has the mic. Missy Mai Hong.
Hello. So Art was my vice principal when I was in elementary school. That's how he knows me.
Oh, that hurt him. That was a stab in the back. How are you feeling, Mr. Kimura?
But I, like Art said, I was in robotics, and that inspired me to become an avionics engineer for the Hawaii Spaceflight Lab. To comment on what you had said earlier about females being more driven, and that's something that you see, I feel like that's because we are terrified of becoming irrelevant as a female engineer. I know I work incredibly hard just so that I can ensure that I stay relevant. And to speak on the education standpoint, I work at the University of Hawaii at Manoa for the Hawaii Spaceflight Lab. And so we do work with a lot of undergraduates as well as high schoolers. And I do mentor McKinley's robotics team. So I do get to work with a variety of different students. And the students that I see succeed the most is the students that are driven. So we need to teach students how to think. We need to teach students to achieve, to push for more. And we need to inspire them to do this. Those are the students that I feel and I've seen countless times, the ones who end up working for Boeing, for Microsoft. They are the ones that were inspired and driven to do what they desire, what they want to do, something that they're passionate about. We need to find what their passions are, whether it be arts. I have a student that I mentored and I still keep in contact with who works for Sony, and she does 3D animation. It's kind of roboticsy, but it's also kind of not. It's very artistic. And she always sends me pictures of like things that she's working on, her different projects, and it's really inspiring for me to see all of those things. It's also very important to encourage students who are interested in going into trade to go into trade. I know like one of the students that I mentored a while ago when I was in undergrad, he went to community college and he now makes more money than I do because he fixes airplanes. So, I mean, it's a highly technical skill, but at the same time, it's very high in demand.
Thank you, Missy Mai Hong. We have neighbor island educators here as well. We haven't heard from them.
Aloha, thank you, Leslie.
Julie Patel.
Hi, I'm from University of Hawaii Maui College, and I wanted to build off of Mr. Baker's comment earlier. Your comment, by the way, Missy Mai Hong, was so excellent and right on. I think finding that purpose, is really important. We talked about where are the boys in school at our college. About 2/3 of our student population are women, right? And so where's the men? And yet there's a lot of men in here, So I think there's been a period of time where our parents have been so obsessed about higher education, correct? I mean, whose parent, your parents probably told you, get a degree. And the reality is, from Carnegie studies, there's a lot of jobs that don't require the degree, which goes back to the vocational ed, which is an old-time word, which relates to CTE and trades. And so reviving that is really an important part of career readiness and choices. On behalf of the University of Hawaii Community College system, we're also partnering with the high schools to dive deeper into identifying that leap of CTE from high school to the college, and how do we make
CTE is
that
career technical education.
Correct. And CTEs in the high schools have shown a greater percentage of graduation rates for high school students. And so the next thing is, well, how do we push them forward to the next part of their education? What is it that they want to do? And for the men out there, many of them like to work with their hands, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need to be encouraging them where they are and really motivating them to have that purpose to say, hey, you can make pretty good money doing this, On the other side, my role at the college is helping students with career readiness skills. So if there's any three things that I could honestly say that students need to be prepared for, is besides ethics, what Mr. Kimura said, ethics, soft skills with communication, and it's not just that, they need to be able to address conflict. We're in a society that conflict is on the news, so we only hear about it, but when we're in that situation, people go crazy, or they're conflict adverse, right? And so really teaching these dynamic skills of communication, having grit, which is part of the growth mindset, are all these things that we're trying to educate our future students to learn, grow, have ethics, a strong work ethic, are all these things that we need to develop in our youth, and it starts at home. That's the reality of it. A lot of us have to take ownership with whether or not you're a parent or not. If you're around young people, you need to be a good role model for them. So if you can start there and start encouraging them to have that grit, they'll succeed any which way. A degree, a trade, whatever that is for them that makes them happy. So instead of putting people into a box, we're saying go explore that and test it and practice it.
Great points. Thank you, Ms. Patel. And before we leave the subject, we have another neighbor islander. Let's talk to Ms. Fluharty.
Hi, I work at Kauai Community College, and I evaluate a lot of the data about our students at the college. And I think, as Neighbor Island schools, we have a real responsibility to understand the community we serve and align our programs to fit those community needs. I know in evaluating our data at my school, yes, there are more women than men attending. But if you look at the trades, I could probably name all of the women in our trades programs. If you look at the STEM programs, we still have, some inconsistencies in the proportion of men and women. I agree with you too that, folks that go into, I also teach code. I teach structured query language, which is, a code that we use to join information together to provide meaning behind our data. I think that, we go into a technical field as people who are talented in this realm, and that comes easy. What's hard is communication. I've spent more time working on my communication skills than I have the technical skills behind coding. If you're naturally driven to, be in a technical role, sometimes, the public speaking and the communication doesn't necessarily come naturally. So it's really, thinking creatively, working on communication skills, and then identifying those opportunities in your community and aligning your best practices in education to fill those needs. And that's especially important on those neighbor islands.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. We've been joined in progress by the head of our Local 5 Hotel Workers Union, Eric Gill. Thank you for coming. I know you had a personal issue that you took care of. Just want to revisit the strike issue another time, because I noticed that the union is not saying we don't want technology, and Jean Teo Gibney told us, hey, we welcome all that help it could get us, because we get tired and we need some muscle sometimes. But your position is you want a say in the technology. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, first of all, we should have no illusions. This is going to eliminate large amounts of our workforce. People will not have jobs. It's not going to be the problem of people not wanting to find jobs. There are not going to be jobs. That's a basic problem here. And this is not anything new. You know, when technology first started, that's what happened when they made textile mills. You know, thousands and thousands of weavers were out of work, and they had to go work in factories, and they were no longer independent contractors. It happened on the docks when I was in high school, when they went to containerization. We used to have, I don't know, 10,000 longshoremen. There's like 400 left. You know, and so the fact is, people are going to be squeezed out of work. And so you know, I think it's fine that we're training people for the new era, but we should be realistic about the actual circumstances that we face here. The corporations that employ us now will be glad to lay us off and keep all the productivity gains. We expect, for example, Jean's job to be largely eliminated, because that's what they're doing right now. There's an app to check in, they have face recognition to check in, and so we have to figure out how we're going to place, you know, hundreds of front desk clerks. We have a housekeeping robot where the inventors are saying, this robot can do the work of 3. Okay, so what do we do with the other 2 housekeepers? They're not going to learn code. That's not going to happen, okay? They're going to be unemployed. You know, we have to consider the fact that this has a profound impact beyond just our jobs. It's the tax base. Who's going to pay for the schools for you to educate these students for the new world if nobody's paying taxes? And robots aren't going to pay taxes. The truth is that real wages in this country have been flat since I was in high school, and productivity's gone up like 300%, meaning the corporate employers have kept all the gains from productivity. They've kept it all. So we are facing a situation where it's not just us. Obviously, hotel workers in places that don't have a union are going to be unable to find the resources they need to deal with this. We have a training trust fund. We are developing training programs for this. It's not just our industry either. You talk about the trades and vocational education. Well, I saw a video of a nice big truck that looks like that one that does the zipper lanes, and it lays nice even lines of brick. And then it starts there and lays them back and lays them back. That's going to be hundreds of masons out of work. That's just the reality of it. So what we're trying to do is not, you know, I don't think it's, Gene's more fulsome than I am. You know, I mean, frankly, for me, it'd be nice if this problem didn't happen. But the fact is, technology is going to continue to grow at a faster and faster pace because our federal government wants Terminator robots, and they're getting them. I just saw a video of the Boston Dynamics, and they got a robot that looks like RoboCop, and he can do backflips and run upstairs and carry hundreds of pounds of weaponry. So there's an arms race going on here, and it's driving the rest, because, you know, once they develop the robot for the soldiers, they'll want to have consumer applications, and that's what they're doing. So we have basically, you know, we are not under any illusions that somehow the union can just say no to this. So we are attempting to accomplish basically 3 goals. You know, one, we want to find a way that working people who are displaced by this can land. And that means, you know, it means a lot of things, but at the very least, it means severance. It means, you know, continued benefits and so on, so people can find another way to make a living if there is one. Secondly, we want to retrain our people for any new jobs that are created. And you guys can train all the students you want, but those are our jobs, and we want to keep them. So, you know, if Jean is laid off, okay, we want to be able to retrain her for something else. And so that comes at a cost, meaning the employer has to pick up the tab for that, and that's what we're attempting to get. And the third thing we want to do is capture the gains of the productivity increase. Why should the company get all the benefit from laying us off? And, you know, the best example of that is what the longshoremen accomplished some decades ago, where, in essence, they were able to bargain so that there were fewer jobs, but those jobs became very well-paid jobs. and people had to learn to use the computer and run the crane and all that. But that one guy, makes a lot more than I do. So we think that we can accomplish some of this if we can achieve a contract that, in essence, compels the employer to have a discussion with us, and not just any kind of discussion. We have to have real bargaining with real power to achieve something, and then we can bargain these things. But let's not make any mistake about it. There's hundreds and hundreds, thousands of jobs that are going to go away, and we got to figure out as a community how to deal with that. And those of you in the schools are right on the front line of that question, because how are we going to pay for the schools? And so what we're doing here is trying to, in essence, be the, I guess, the line of defense for Hawaii's people in trying to deal with this. We have to get the global corporations that we work for to respect us enough as workers and as people in this community to bargain in good faith with us and try to reach an agreement in good faith and not just roll over us. So we took the opportunity of this bargaining, where we do have the right to strike and the opportunity to do so, to try to drive this agreement now. It's happening really fast. Technological change is moving very fast. They're doing things now that they couldn't do 6 months ago, and 6 months from now they'll be able to do stuff they can't do now. And we've already seen a lot of jobs lost over the last decades, but this pace of it is unprecedented. It's moving really fast. And so for our point of view, we have to stand up now and have an agreement now that will work for Hawaii's people. And we think that we can be a good example of that, how to do what everybody's talking about, adapt to the changes. People get hurt when there's change, and it's our goal to ensure that our people here in Hawaii get hurt as little as possible, and that we can capture the new jobs coming forward. If there's going to be a machine that does my job, I'm a dishwasher by trade, and I've seen a machine now that can do that. Well, that's still my job. It was our job before there were 3-bin Hobarts that we've used all these years. Before that, it was double sinks. So if they put in technology, it's still our work. If they put in robots, that's still our work. So we want to protect our jobs and to ensure that our people are given the opportunity to do that. That's not what these corporations are going to do. They're going to hire some IT person and try to have them do it. That's why we're fighting about it.
Thank you very much for being here. I know you have negotiations tomorrow, you and Ms. Teo Gibney. So we want to just say the best to your hotel workers and hope that this is going to be something that will play out in different ways in different industries, and we just all have to be aware and empathize and wish for an equitable solution. Thank you very much, Mr. Gill. There's such sadness in leaving something one has depended upon and not knowing where one is going. On the other hand, and this is a tough transition here, could this be the game changer, the opportunity to actually make our economy stronger, being prepared for jobs that pay salaries that actually align with the cost of living here? That seems to be something that went away from us. As you mentioned, in the 70s, it seems like job pay kept up with the cost of living. Not anymore. Can we give our children an opportunity to be among the most competent workforces in the country as new types of jobs are created? So I think this may be about, do we have the will? Do they have the ability? Will this work? Could we hear from you on this subject? Do we have the political will to make equity and the future roll out in a way that is fair?
Pick up on where Eric left off. I think I'm here to be the contrarian in the room. I think we need to start seriously thinking about reinventing our social contract and our social safety net, our pre-21st century one. Almost everything is based on work, training for work, looking for work. I think a guaranteed basic income based on citizenship rather than some combination of work, welfare, and/or charity is a matter of when, not if. There are many ways to fund it other than just taxing the rich people and the robots. That's one way that a lot of people are talking about, but there's many other ways that could be done. But beyond that, that'll help the younger generations. I think that and Medicare for All, well, actually, people won't stay home and play video games. That'll give them the security and the safety net to try new things, to train and retrain as often as necessary. And as everybody's pointed out, it's going to be a moving target, and it's going to be moving faster and faster. And that could, a lot of people just may not be able to cope with that psychologically and financially and other ways. But what do we do about our existing industries? We export a tremendous amount of money for food and energy. There's been a lot of talk about ways we can do that. I won't get off into that. But in terms of tourism, most of the money generated here, the profits leave the state. And I've been thinking and talking to different people for 25 years. There's profit sharing. There's been tax incentives for that for decades. Employee stock ownership, same thing. There's a concept called the ownership transfer corporation concept, where over a period of 20 years with tax inducements and other incentives, we could capture more of the profits locally by transitioning ownership from offshore absentee owners back to local stakeholders, including taxpayers, employees, hotel employees in that case. There's any number of ways. We just need to start talking about this and broaching the subject, because just tinkering around the edges, as Eric said, is just not going to get it done anymore, in my opinion.
Thank you, Dr. Brandt. Dr. Krug.
Yeah, I think I want to, and it may take us down a little bit different path, but I think it's more considerations. Ultimately, I think tradition, native wisdom provides us with certain understandings from our past. And so being able to see Tahiti before you leave for your destination is important. I think in a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing tonight, the trepidation for someone who values native wisdom is that we don't know where we're going. We're racing down a path potentially to a brick wall at speeds that are out of our control. And ultimately, I mean, there's an inevitability, and I feel like an ambient belief and acceptance to the path. I think that trepidation is going to be not understanding where we end up, not understanding the path to get there, and in the end, I mean, and I'll bring up an example, is that one of the things that in many of our schools that we focus on, we use culture and language to help rebuild relationships within our families. And I know that this is about the workforce and jobs. But ultimately, to build secure whole children, the expectation that morals and values and the ethic that we're looking for in this race down the path isn't happening at sometimes because of technology, that we see iPads, computers, TV screens, it started a long time ago, babysitting our youth. And ultimately, the wisdom of our humanity, our historical humanity, the wisdom of our land, the wisdom of, and I know I'll bring it up, our spirit, ultimately, I think is on the precipice right now. That when you look at the speed and the rapidity of our acceptance of the inevitability of technology, my fear is ultimately for aloha. What happens to aloha when our mind is consumed with a capitalistic and individualistic race to be the best? And ultimately, I think we've heard a lot of things in here. I know you guys think about this too. So, I mean, what I feel that in education is that making sure that the schools, teachers, and families, because these children will become parents, and what will they do in the future? How will they raise their families if the families now have iPads babysitting them? What ethic and what morals do iPads and computers and video games give our children? And so my concern is just that, and I leave it like that. Mahalo.
And Dr. Krug, to your point about culture and how important it is, if any of you have heard of this company called Salesforce, they're a company that's the fastest growing company, $12 billion in the world, faster than Microsoft, faster than Google, faster than any company at $12 billion. It's owned by Its CEO is Mark Benioff. And if you don't know who he is, he's a very interesting person. He embraces and he runs that company on two principles, Ohana and the Aloha spirit. Okay? So to your point, you're right. Creating responsible leaders, people that have that sense of ethic, that guiding light, is what we're looking for. And to your point, when we're doing, or when you have your leaders out there that are taking profits and benefiting no one else but themselves, maybe some of those leaders, or the way that we raise our children, is kind of the answer to that, having those types of leaders.
And that sounds great. I think the ethic I'm talking about isn't on an individual or a company's basis, it's a collective ethic. Are we all functioning like that? Are all of the companies believing in Ohana and Aloha? I don't know. I don't believe so.
Norm? Mr. Baker?
A lot of what we've talked about here tonight, I think, comes down to looking at corporations and employers and the workforce as in some kind of a battle. One's going to do better than the other. Why does it have to be that way? I totally agree with you, Dr. Krug. It doesn't have to be that way. We need to bring back things like apprenticeship programs where the companies tell the potential learners, this is what we need, and then agree to hire them when they come back. Here's a great statistic. We need 150,000 pilots in the next 10 years. 150,000. Do you imagine that Hawaiian Airlines has trouble hiring pilots? I have no doubt that they do. Why don't we have a place on Oahu where we are training pilots that Hawaiian Airlines pays for the training and they go to work for Hawaiian Airlines? It's perfect. But instead, what we've gotten into is this, here's the corporations making all the money, and here's the employees striving to stay where they're at, or at least maintain status quo, when if we were working all together, it would come out a heck of a lot better.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Ms. Moriyama?
I just want to, I appreciate the conversation. It's been very stimulating, and I don't have a lot of clarity of thought at the moment, but couple things that are coming up is I think daily about kind of the nonprofit sector in Hawaii and our industry. And I think that when I think about the wonderful work that kids are doing in schools, and my own son is a digital native. I mean, he was born with these skill sets and these propensities and this comfort level that I don't have. So there's a digital divide between the two of us. But I'm noticing, as I hear from nonprofits that are working with schools and across the state, that not all kids have access to that equipment, those resources, those community partnerships. So there is a digital divide between kids within the same generation. And what the other thing that we really think about in the nonprofit sector is how do we use technology kind of holistically to include everyone, to basically make sure that people with disabilities can have access to jobs, people of different sexual orientation can have access to jobs. And what does the future look like utilizing technology to engage all in our society so that everybody can have a living, workable wage and afford living in Hawaii? One of the things that I think about at the end of the day is that we're human beings. And I think that we'll naturally crave intimacy, belonging, and much of our sector is about that. Hula halaus, soccer clubs, all of those types of things that bring us together and are inclusive. And at the end of the day, I think I'm going to kind of challenge prevailing notion. Technology is great, but we're going to need to be connectors. We're going to need to be communicators. We're going to be translators and interpreters and brokers so that we can be better connected. So those are the things that I've been thinking about. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. And we've come to the end of our time. I could listen to you guys for a long time, and maybe you could stay. But I feel so good to live in the same community with you. I really appreciate what all of you have said and your feelings here. And I hope we can be up to this challenge, have the grit and the aloha, which is not a weak word, it's very powerful. let's keep talking and let's keep working together. You know, it's been nearly 2 hours, so much more to consider. Artificial intelligence, robotics, and other emerging technologies may redefine what it means to be human. How will we evolve along with the technologies we create? As to Dr. Krug's point, will the government need to guarantee an income for individuals who are left out of the new workforce? We invite you to the next Kākou, The Future of Work, Part 2, which will air on April 25th. For that evening, we intend to have a kind of summit of top decision makers from Hawaii business, government, labor, school systems, and more. On behalf of the Board of Directors and the staff of PBS Hawaii, I want you to know that we are honored to be your public television station. You've been watching Kākou, Hawaii's Town Hall on PBS Hawaii. I'm Leslie Wilcox. Aloha nui.
I think artificial intelligence is very concerning, but I mean, I thrive on interpersonal connections, and for that, I am hopeful for like my security in the future.
I hope that they won't develop something that'll take over creativity of the human mind, because I think that's something that you can't replicate, you know, and everyone has their own ideas.
It's what we look forward to whenever we watch TV. We look forward to seeing those commercials with new technology that we can buy and use in our own homes. But at the same time, it's terrifying because the technology or these things and these machines will take over our jobs.
Hawaii is one of the leading states of renewable energy. So just as artificial intelligence, we do have that capacity to lead in artificial intelligence as well. It could be a driving force of our economy in the future.
Especially because tourism is, which is what Hawaii is oriented towards, is sort of unstable, because you don't always know that tourists will keep coming and coming in the future. So if the way of the nation and then the world is going towards artificial intelligence, it'd be a pretty good idea to hop on that train.